ध्यायेत् शारदचन्द्रसुन्दरमुखम् ताम्रारविन्देक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवराभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमात्रोज्ज्वलम् स्वात्मानन्दरसानुभूतिविवशम् सर्वानवद्याङ्गकम् श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणेश्वरं गुरुवरं योगासनाध्यासितं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमहमिति साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वतामच्युतव पवनचलनरोध आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। Namo Ramana. We will commence today's evening Atma Vichara session by reading Bhagavan's Upadesham. As usual, we have been reading from the book Self-Enquiry 1900 to 1950. It's Ramana's answers on Atma Vichara, a compilation by our founder President Sri A.R. Natarajanji. After this, we will have a 20 minutes meditation, and then Akka is been speaking on Ramana Gita. She would be speaking on Ramana Gita. Then followed the conclusion, we will have the prayers to Bhagavan again. In the series of questions that we have been meditating on, Bhagavan has brought us to question number 51. A devotee. Will it be helpful if I gaze from time to time on your eyes or face during the effort at meditation? Or should I keep the eyes closed? When practicing the enquiry at one's own place, should the eyes be closed or fixed on some object of devotion? I repeat the question. Will it be helpful if I gaze from time to time on your eyes or face during the effort at meditation? Or should I keep the eyes closed? When practicing the enquiry at one's own place, should the eyes be closed or fixed on some object of devotion? Bhagavan, look at yourself or Atma rather than anywhere else. The eyes may be kept open or closed. It is immaterial. There is only one eye, whether you spell it as English letter I or EYE. There is no point in opening or closing the eyes. Attention must be focused on the inner eye. You are not eye that can be opened or closed. You may close or open the eyes according to your liking, for you will cease to think of the world when you think of the self. If you are in a room and do not look out, it is immaterial whether you close the window or keep them open. I repeat Bhagavan's answer. Look at yourself or Atma rather than anywhere else. The eyes may be kept open or closed. It is immaterial. There is only one I, whether you spell it as I or EYE. There is no point in opening or closing the eyes. Attention must be focused on the inner eye. You are not eye that can be opened or closed. You may close or open the eyes according to your liking, for you will cease to think of the world when you think of the self. If you are in a room and do not look out, it is immaterial whether you close the windows or keep them open. As Bhagavan in Atma Vichara book also, Who Am I book also makes it very clear that as long as one is seeing the world, one doesn't experience the self. And when one is experiencing the self, one doesn't experience the world. This is very fundamentally true. So we need to see ourselves whether we are experiencing the world or we are experiencing the self. There is self alone is, that also Bhagavan says. When self alone is, that's all, period. But if I don't see it as a self, but I see it as different entities, then I am experiencing it as a world. So Bhagavan is saying here, as long as we are experiencing it, the world, we will not experience the self. Let us say the self is like the screen, which is another example Bhagavan gives. Now the screen doesn't experience the movie at all. If you go and ask the screen knows nothing about the movie. It is, whereas the movie cannot be played without the screen. So the screen has absolutely no experience of the movie, but the movie cannot be played without the screen. It's the same with the self as well. The self never experiences the world. Self experiences the self alone at all times. But the world, when we say is happening, it is happening only on the support of the self. This is the truth that we need to understand. So, as long as the idea there is I, the individual, or EYE, the physical I, these divisions are there, the I, the world, everything, then the movie is what is real. We are not looking at the self, which is the support of the movie, or the screen, which is the support of the movie. So moment we are looking at the movie, Bhagavan asks us, the movie we have absolutely no control how the movie will play on. And therefore, we are bound to experience all sorts of movement, ups and downs, divisions to our liking or to our disliking. So the only way to free ourselves from that movie, which is just grasped our attention or we are glued to it, is by really inquiring, whom is this movie? Who am I? When we question that, then the attention moves away from the movie, the whole panorama of divisions, into the self, which is this single most truth, which alone is. And when we move, when the attention moves away from the movie and gets established in the self, then in the self, we see that absolutely there is no movie, or the self is not at all perceiving any movie at all. Self alone is, period. As the screen alone is, there is no movie that is being, though the movie may be played, but the screen is not aware of it. Similarly, the self is not aware of the movie. So Bhagavan asks us to repeatedly move our attention to the source, wherein there is absolutely no change, but yet it is the support of everything, or it alone is. And by repeatedly moving our attention from the movie to the screen, Bhagavan says here, then how does it matter whether the movie is being played or not being played? Bhagavan is saying, if we are inside the room and we are not looking, if we are not interested in looking out, how does it matter whether the windows are open or closed? It is similarly, when for the screen, whether the movie is being played on it or the movie has totally stopped on it, or whatever may be the content of the movie that is being played, the screen knows that nothing is happening to it. So the screen simply remains as the screen, period. And that is the beauty of the Atma Vichara. It takes us to that truth which is real, and all the others, which is only imaginative in nature, is constantly put to vichara, constantly asked whether it is real. And we see that all the thoughts, including the most fundamental I thought, the first thought, is all something which rises and subsides, and for whom, when we inquire, then we go to the source. For whom does it rise? For whom does it subside? Where from it rises? Where it will subside? If we go to the source, then we see that the self alone is at all times totally self alone is. And everything is perfectly valid and whole and complete as that self. The immense grace of Bhagavan for the next 20 minutes, let us do Atma Vichara. In Atma Vichara, Bhagavan asks us to move the attention which was going on the thought back to the self, the source. He says, no matter how many thoughts rises, no matter what is the nature of the thought, we should repeatedly inquire, to whom is this? Moment we do so, we recognize the first person division that has happened. It is for me, I. We have taken I to be granted. We are that real individual. So it brings that attention to the individual notion that we are holding on to. And thereupon Bhagavan asks us to inquire, who am I? When we put this question, who am I really? Am I this individual? Or where from this I notion raises? What is the reality of this I? What is the real source of this I feeling? When we go to the source, then we go to the self, where there is absolutely no division, where self alone is. And by repeatedly diving back into the self, Bhagavan assures that the mind will gain enough strength to remain at the source with repeated practice. The immense grace of Bhagavan, for the next 20 minutes, let us do Atma Vichara. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Now, Akka will continue with Ramana Gita talk.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana.
Namo Ramana.
Shining as a self.
Prostrations to
in all
Ramana,
beings.
shining as a self in all beings. Let the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana. In this part of the satsang, we are meditating on Ramana Gita, which is a compilation of answers by Bhagavan to questions by various seekers in the years 1913 to 1970. And this compilation has been recorded and translated into Sanskrit and put into the form of 18 chapters like Bhagavad Gita by Ganapati Muni. And we just had meditated for some time on the 7th chapter, which was Atma Vichara. So the chapters do not end with Atma Vichara. In fact, the very 7th chapter is Atma Vichara. The 2nd chapter was Hridaya Vidya. The 1st chapter was the emphasis on practice. Then the 2nd chapter was the core, which is the Ekashloki of Bhagavan. The 3rd chapter was the paramount duty, most important duty, which is, Bhagavan says, which is abiding in the self. So then the nature of knowledge was described in the 4th chapter. The 5th chapter was Hridaya Vidya. The 6th chapter was control of mind, and the 7th was Atma Vichara. Now we are on the 8th chapter, which is Ashrama Vichara. That is about the stages of life which are prescribed normally: Brahmacharya, Grahastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasa. So in the very opening, Bhagavan actually is explaining these ashramas with reference to a question asked by Kashni. It is said in the earlier chapter itself, but that was not covered over there. So, Kashnereva param prashnam nishamya bhagavan munihi chaturashramya sambaddham adhikaram nyarupayat, says Muni. And then Bhagavan began this chapter, the delineation, by saying Brahmachari grihivapi vanaprastothava atava yatihi nariva vrishalovapi pakvo brahma vicharayet. He started by saying that one who is ripe can always inquire into the self. There is no restriction based on the ashrama. It is not that only the sannyasi can do self-enquiry. A brahmachari can equally practice self-enquiry, so can a grihastha, so can a vanaprastha, so can the sannyasi, so can a woman, says Bhagavan, and anyone who is not directly belonging to any of these ashrama dharmas. So because if ashrama dharmas are only for those who belong to the Sanatana Dharma, what about others? So anyone belonging to any creed can practice self-enquiry. Bhagavan has given that at that point of time. In this, it is not getting externalized constantly. Then he says one is fit for self-enquiry. So Bhagavan gave the inner criterion at that point of time. The inner criterion for self-enquiry. Here he is saying external circumstances are not of significance. So anyone who is ripe for self-enquiry, as described already in the earlier chapter, anyone who is already feeling detached from sense experiences, anyone who is keen to experience the self is fit for self-enquiry, and such a person is considered to be pakwa. All right, Pakko Brahma Vicharayet, says Bhagavan. Then he says that these ashramas are like steps. It's like saying first standard, second standard, third standard, like that. Or you can say primary school, middle school, higher secondary. Then you go on to the collegiate education, degree, post-graduation, then doctoral studies, post-doctoral studies. So it can go on step by step, right? Normally, the progression is like that. When we were young in school, they had one system which was called double promotion. That is, a child could move from one class to the next successive, not the next one, but miss one, skip one class and go to the next class. Say a child in the first standard, at the end of the first standard examination, could go to the third standard instead of going to the second standard. The double promotion system was there. It is always possible that there are children of extraordinary intellect who do not need to go progressively one step by step from one class to another. In fact, it is said that if a child is very bright and you put them in a class where their intellect is not being challenged, they will also end up having attention deficit. They'll not be paying attention to the class teacher because they already know what is happening. They've already understood. They understand it so quickly. So such children were promoted to a higher class in the earlier system, but now it is not so. There are different systems which come in, which are brought in. Now even in the nursery, they just leave the books for the children to explore, and one child may explore up to lesson 10 in the book also within the very first few days. Another child may be at lesson 1 or 2. So the children are allowed to move on at their own pace. Yeah, so Bhagavan is saying that though these are steps, सोपानवत् परं प्राप्तुं भविष्यत्याश्रमक्रमः अत्यन्तपक्वचित्तस्य क्रमापेक्षा न विद्यते. Okay? So, if again he says, if one is right, then one can move from brahmacharya to sannyasa. One need not necessarily cross through the grihastha and the vanaprastha. One can just go into self-enquiry directly, right in the first step, if one is pakwa. Or one might have got into the second step, one might have got into grihastha. One need not wait to go up to sannyasa to begin the self-enquiry and self-abidance practice. So Bhagavan says that there is no kramapeksha na vidyate, for whom atyanta pakva chittasya, for one who is pure of mind. Then why are these steps prescribed at all? Gataye loka karyanam adishantyashramakramam ashramatraya dharmanam najnana pratikulata. These stages in life have been prescribed for the smooth functioning of society. They are not meant for the progression for self-knowledge. They may help in progression towards self-knowledge, but they have been basically prescribed for the sake of societal norms, societal discipline. It would be good in the society if there is an order. There is an orderly way of life. And if everyone automatically follows the orderly way of life, there will be a very smooth functioning in the society. Because of this, it has been prescribed. But supposing one wants to abide by the societal norms, would it be a detriment to the pursuit of self-enquiry and and the attainment of self-knowledge, Bhagavan says, no. Don't worry whether you are a brahmachari or a grahastha. Don't think that, oh, because I am in this stage of life, I may not get jnana. No. Na jnana pratikulata. Ashramatraya dharmanam na jnana pratikulata. So he says the first three ashramas. Of course, everyone knows that sannyasa is meant only for completely dedicated practice of self-abidance. So that ashrama is acceptable to all the practitioners of self-enquiry. What about the remaining three ashramas? Can one practice self-enquiry and self-abidance at that time? Bhagavan says, certainly. Ashramatraya dharmanam na jnana pratikulata. They are not opposed to jnana. So one may abide in the self regardless of one's circumstances, which include the ashrama dharma. So then Bhagavan says, why is this so? What about the fourth stage? Sannyaso nirmala jnanam nakashayo namundanam. Sannyasa is pure knowledge. It is not a question of physically renouncing, wearing the ochre robe, or doing tonsure, shaving one's head. But why again? Why again the prescription of sannyasa? Why at all this ashrama? If one can be abiding in the self even when one is a grahastha or when one is a brahmachari, why is there an exalted place given to sannyasa in the spiritual practice? Bhagavan says, Pratibandhaka bahulya varanayashramo matah. Because it helps preventing obstacles. That is why the sannyasa ashrama is prescribed. What are the obstacles? The obstacles are only within. The obstacles are only our thoughts. The obstacle to self-knowledge is nothing but the first rising of the I thought and subsequently other thoughts which get attached to the I thought or are created by the I thought. There is no other obstacle at all to self-knowledge. Nothing else veils the self but the I thought. Then, why is it said that obstacles can be removed or by the sannyasa ashrama? Because while it is the I thought alone which is the obstruction to self-knowledge, the I thought by force of habit is always externalized. It moves outwards, it moves towards objects, and it keeps gathering objects in its treasure chest. It keeps on putting away this knowledge, that knowledge, this. In fact, where are all our possessions? They're all only in our thought treasury. We remember them, all of them, and when we forget any of our possessions, that is no longer our possession. It could be, but it is not there for us. It is not there in our memory. If a person gets dementia or gets Alzheimer's and they forget even their dear ones, then what happens? That object, that dear one, that relationship, when they forget their dear ones, they may forget what is there in the bank also. Then is that a reality for them at that point of time or not? Is the bank account a reality or not? So, everything that is outside is only known inside. However, by force of habit, what happens when the mind moves outside? It keeps associating one object with another and another and another and another. So every time the mind moves outside, there is a possibility of getting lost in a world or millions of thoughts. That's why Bhagavan says, be very careful and cut every thought even as it rises. So if a person has consciously cut away all one's objective ties, that is in terms of relationships, in terms of possessions, and has become a sannyasi, there is much less scope for thinking because there are fewer things to think about. A sannyasi will not worry about his near and dear ones because he has already cut away those bonds. A sannyasi will not worry about his own house, about keeping it clean or whatever he has to do, because typically a sannyasi, if a sannyasi is a parivrajaka sannyasi, he will keep moving from place to place. He will not worry about where to cook my food, how to cook my food. Typically, in those days, how a sannyasi would live was by renouncing everything. So, what happens? Say, even if a sannyasi today is in an ashrama and is fairly well looked after, still the number of bondings that a sannyasi has are far less than of one who is living in the world. Therefore, it is said that it is conducive to the practice of Atma Vichara, to the practice of self-abidance. Because a sannyasi cannot blame his external circumstances for not being able to practice self-inquiry. Many of us may say, I have these duties to perform, I have this to do, I have that to do. Therefore, I do not find enough time to practice self-inquiry. A sannyasi cannot say that. He cannot say, I have 10 jobs to do, I have so many goals to meet. His only goal is self-knowledge. So it is said that that stage is conducive. It prevents the rise of obstacles. It deals with many obstacles and clears the path for self-abidance. Only externally it can do that. But the self-abidance alone is jnana. That has already been told in the very first chapter. Then what of the brahmachari? ब्रह्मचर्याश्रमे यस्य शक्तिरुज्जृम्भते व्रतैः विद्यया ज्ञानवृद्ध्या च स पश्चात् प्रज्वलिष्यति विद्यया ज्ञानवृद्ध्या च स पश्चात् प्रज्वलिष्यति. A brahmachari, if he is pure and he is practicing what? Jnana vriddhi. If he is constantly practicing the path of self-inquiry, and if he is also supporting it through his studies, vidyaya jnana vidyaja, sa paschat prajwalishyati. So as he progresses, whether he becomes a sannyasi or whether he becomes a grihastha, he will shine. So one's discipline, Bhagavan here is talking about the internal discipline and the external discipline as well. Since there has been question about it, he says, lead a pure life, dedicated only to the pursuit of jnana and to the study of the related scriptures. This will enable one to continue to be pure no matter what is the next stage of life one gets into by the course of one's own destiny. Brahmacharyena shuddhena grihitve nirmalo bhavet sarvesham upakaraya grihasthashrama uchyate. One who is pure as a sannyasi will also remain pure. One who is pure as a brahmachari will also remain pure as a householder. Why at all go into the stage of a householder? Bhagavan says it is for the benefit of the whole world. We also saw last time, because all people belonging to all other ashramas are dependent on the householder for support. The householder has to support the brahmachari and the vanaprastha and the sannyasi. So the householder's role is purely for the benefit of society, for everyone. Bhagavan gives a very, very high responsibility to the householder. It is not an ashrama which is for their own enjoyment. It is sarvesham upakaraya. It is for the good of all that the householders ashrama is taken up. The responsibility of that is taken up by an individual. It is for the good of all. And who is an householder? A householder may be defined today in today's terms as anyone who earns an income. May be called a householder, because a brahmachari does not earn for himself. He is supported by the parents or the other members of society who give him bhiksha. Similarly, the vanaprastha and the yati. So, who is the householder? The householder is not necessarily one who is married. The householder is one who earns something. If one earns something, it must be understood that this earning which one is receiving from the society is for the benefit of all. Sarvesham upakaraya. I remember that Acharya Vinoba Bhave had said, you set aside 6% of your income. And my father said he was influenced by that. And he said, in early years, his salary was quite low. Those days, of course, 10 rupees, 12 rupees and all might have been a high salary. But even then, to set aside 6% of it would often be challenging. But he said that is the way one should live. At least a certain percentage of one's earnings one should keep aside for the society. This is a very obvious way of sharing. But there are also other ways of sharing. The ways of sharing is whatever we have, whether it is vidya, whether it is wealth, whether it is anything else. It could be culture, it could be kala, it could be something which God gives us. Creativity, the moment we get it, if we share it with others, it becomes sarvesham upakaraya. Whatever wealth is given to us by God, when we have any wealth, we are householders. And it is our duty to share that wealth with everyone. With everyone. Whoever comes into our fold is everyone. Everyone is not the millions of living beings in this world. Whoever the life, whoever the destiny, whoever the God's plan brings into our boundaries, into our ambit, those are the people whom we can call everyone. And we should be ready to share it with anyone else also who comes. The definition of Jagat Guru was given by Chandrasekhara Bharati Mahaswami. He was asked, how do you declare yourself to be the world teacher? He said, it means I am open to anyone in this Jagat. I am ready to receive them as my Shishya. If anyone wants to come to me as a Guru, anyone in this Jagat, I am open to it. That's why I am called a Jagat Guru. So one has to be open to give. This is the dharma, Bhagavan says. This is the dharma of the grihastha. And this must also be done with detachment. Sarvadha vita sangasya grihastasyapi dehina. It must be done with detachment, this sharing. Not with the sense that I am sharing, I am giving. No. Sarvada, at all times, without any sense of detachment. If one does engages in the service activity for which one's grihastha shrama has been established, then Param praspurati jyotihi. Then Bhagavan says the light of the self will certainly shine forth. Tattva naivasti samshayaha. There is no doubt about it, says Bhagavan. Param praspurati jyoti tatra naivasti samshaya. It is his blessing, it is his statement on authority that in case any of us are engaged in the world, which is what a grihasthashrama is about, if we are engaged in the world, then we must carry on our self-enquiry, recognizing that we are in this world only for paropakara, for the benefit of all the others, for the entire world, and also not be attached to anything which we are in a position to share, not be attached to our capacity to share, not be attached to the wealth, whichever form it comes in, that wealth which is given to us, and with total detachment from all this, when we continue to practice self-enquiry, Bhagavan graciously says that the self will shine forth. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana. अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशे यस्योर्मिमात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि. Namo Ramana to everyone.